No, I found it good just going through, I guess, the depth of particularly around the requirements and differentiation between the project and product.
Yep. Yeah. Thanks, Tanya. And what about work breakdown structure? Any thoughts about work breakdown structure, how to develop it, and why it's important?
Yes, we'll work breakdown structure, different levels, and we get the work packages at the end. So we're gonna use it for the activity and yeah, how to for each level, what is the level and what is the priority for each level.
Oh, yeah, thanks a lot. So we were talking about yesterday's session, and it was our second knowledge area that we discussed, and it was about scope management. We talked about around 6 different uh, processes or 6 different activities. Normally we do when we talk about scope management, starting with planning for the scope management, and then by following that plan, gathering the requirements and defining scope based on those requirements, and then decomposing the whole project or the scope of a project into manageable work packages. We also talked about validation of the scope. Once work is done, what's the way to validate the scope, and who are the stakeholders involved in validation of the scope. And in fact, we have seen a flow chart that shows that how deliverables are produced, verified, and then validated. At the end, we closed our discussion around control scope, where we talked about that the project manager always keep an eye on the scope and how it is being completed, and is it aligned with scope baseline or not. Today we are taking our discussion to the next knowledge area, that is schedule management. uh, this is very important knowledge area for uh, many different sectors, especially if you talk about the industries where project management is done through a very detailed manner. Waterfall approach is completed through a very uh, thorough activities. Scheduling is done in much more detailed way than many other industries. For example, if you talk about telco industry or construction industry, or when we are going for like for skyscrapers or bridges or multi-story buildings, then we do much thorough scheduling as compared to if we are doing maybe an IT project or some other projects like software development projects. Uh, there are there are many different software available that are helpful to do better scheduling. In fact, if we talk about construction industry, there are many different companies who provide services to develop the schedules. Those schedules that should be realistic. The schedules where project managers can confidently say that, okay, our project will be completed on this particular time. In fact, this is the responsibility of a project manager to create a realistic schedule, and also when executing the project work, ensure that the project is completed within the schedule. Okay, so uh, he or she must create those options uh, to make it happen that project is completed on the schedule. In total, there are total, sorry, In total, there are 6 activities, starting for thinking about how to do scheduling, and then following this plan, uh, define activities, sequence them, estimate activity duration using variety of techniques, then develop a realistic schedule by using many different tools and techniques that we are going to discuss today. And when work is going on, control the schedule, mean perform the activities as per the schedule or schedule baseline. 5 processes from planning and 1 process from monitoring and controlling. Uh, when we are going to plan our schedule, that is process 1 of this knowledge area, it talks about uh, how to develop a document, schedule document that help us to plan, manage, and control the project according to the schedule baseline. Okay, and if there comes any schedule variances, how to manage those variances. In fact, we call about we will talk about schedule variances in more details. Our schedule plan. Remember, it is not a schedule. This is planning for the schedule. Okay, our thought process, how to develop the schedule. It should be able to answer these questions. The first question, Myra, can you please read for me?
Who will be involved and what approach will we take to plan the schedule for the project?
Who will be involved, meaning that if you really want to develop a suitable schedule, a schedule on which everybody should be agreed, everybody should have a buy-in. It's important that you should bring uh, important stakeholders on board. You should involve your project team while developing the schedule, because the team is the best resource that can help you to develop a better schedule. And we can use, in fact, we can use many different approaches through which we can plan our schedule. These approaches involve uh, estimation approaches, uh, Gantt charts, critical path methods, network diagrams, so on, so forth. And then uh, this activity or this process called plan schedule management uh, should also include or should also able to answer that what processes and procedures we will use to create the schedule. When we talk about processes or procedures, basically it is talking about that, okay, now we got our work breakdown structure, we have our well-defined scope. In fact, the scope baseline is established. Now we have to achieve this scope. For each work package, what we have to do so that we can complete this work package. In fact, we go for further decomposition. Each work package now will be further decomposed uh, down to the activity level, mean which activities are required to complete each work package. And those activities could be 1 to n activities. Okay. And then we also find out the relationship between those activities. We also estimate the time for them, start and end time, when one activity should start, when one activity should end, and what will be overall duration. We also think about uh, that which activities and their schedule is more critical than the rest of the activities. We also think about the resources, who will be the resources available, who will do these activities, and when they are available, what are their schedule. Resource scheduling also plays an important role when you are developing your activity schedule or your work schedule. Your schedule, your this subsidiary plan called schedule management plan uh, should be able to answer these questions. Uh, Particularly, schedule management plan include all these bits. Let's talk about them one by one. Pedro, can you please go through them?
Scheduling methodology and software used on project.
So scheduling methodologies could be many different methodologies. One of them is called PDN. We are going to discuss about PDN soon. It also talk about network diagram, Gantt charts, bar charts, uh, also talk about critical path method, schedule compression techniques, so on and so forth. And software is also important because most of the project management software gives you uh, uh, this facility or this capability to develop your schedule. In fact, what happens in few industries, the schedule is considered as your project management plan. Schedule is very important artifact, same like work breakdown structure. Schedule is that artifact or that project document that is used for the purpose of communication, for the purpose of discussion. In fact, most of the meetings of the teams are normally done around the schedule, which activities are going on, and who are the people doing those activities, and what about the next activities. If their duration is appropriate, if their start or end dates are appropriate or not. These are basically focus of those project team meetings. And then uh, second point, Pedro.
Second point is the rules for how estimates should be stated.
Here, when we talk about the estimates, we are talking about estimate of the activity duration. How long should be an activity? For example, if activity is like uh, putting the concrete for a fence, okay, how much time it will take? Okay, and will it take like 6 hours, 8 hours, 2 days? How we will do this estimate? Will we do this estimate based on our experience or based by using a heuristic approach, or is there any other approach or not? We are going to talk about many different estimation approaches today. And then
Schedule baseline for measuring against.
yes,
Against.
so scheduling baseline is nothing but your actual schedule that will consist of the activities, their duration, their start and end date, and resource allocations, and milestones, so on and so forth. They combinedly are called our schedule baseline, or in other words, you can think of it is our planned schedule against which we will measure our performance. And then there comes our next point. Pedro.
The next point is the threshold for acceptable variance.
So acceptable variance mean, for example, if we estimated the duration of one activity like 8 hours, uh, how much variance would be acceptable? Is it like plus minus 10%, or how we are going to state this variance, and how much variance would be acceptable for us? For example, variance could be expressed in percentage. It could also be expressed in time. For example, 2 hours, if activity is 2 hours delayed or 2 hours early, it's fine. Otherwise, we have to basically adjust our schedule. And then there come performance measures. Performance measures are uh, against our schedule baseline and our variances. Uh, Plan for how variances will be measured. I already explained to you how can we measure, especially in terms of when we talk about the schedule. And then next step is process for determining if a variance must be acted upon. If there is a variance in the schedule, uh, what a project manager should do. she go for a change request, or he has this authority to manage the project, and or there is some flexibility, sorry, manage the schedule, or there is some flexibility in the schedule or in the activities. We normally call them float. We are going to discuss float today too. Is there any float or slack time available that a project manager could use? And if we have to go for change in the schedule, what is the change control procedure? If project manager can change the schedule by himself, and how he or she will communicate this change in the schedule with rest of the stakeholders. If it is not under the authority of the project manager, then what is the change control procedure? Uh, and then types of reports required. Types of reports required are basically talking about, for example, progress report, status reports, trend reports, so on, so forth. Progress report normally talk about your past work as you completed. Status report, that is our second type of report, is normally talk about your ongoing work, your current status of the work. And then there comes trend report, that talks about your uh, future progress, that okay, if we are going with this speed, when we will be able to complete a particular activity, or when we will be able to complete the whole project or phase. We also talk about formats and the frequencies of the project report. Status report should be daily or weekly or bi-weekly, so on, so forth. And, and if it is agile project management approach, in schedule we talk about release and iterations length. I already discussed, normally iterations are 1 to 4 weeks long, but it totally depends on the team how long they want the iterations. In Scrum, they normally fix it to 2 weeks. In XP, they normally fix it to 1 week. It is preferred that our iteration size should be shorter for frequent feedback, loop. And release, normally within release there are 5 to 8 iterations. Okay, but again it totally depends on the team, what they decide about that, how many iterations would be in one release. Any questions so far? Okay, so now let's move further, and let's talk about define activities. Define activities is a process of decomposition. We have already seen one process of decomposition, that was work breakdown structure, where we decompose our project into the work packages. Now we are going to go to next level, where we are going to decompose each work package into different tasks, or you can say work efforts, or into the activities. The purpose is, previously those work packages are nothing but the work we need to do. Our work packages are deliverable that need to be completed. But to complete those deliverables, we need to do some activities, isn't it? Again, if we take the example of a house, if one work package is putting the fence, then there would be many different activities that we need to do while completing that one work package, that is building a fence, starting from digging the holes, putting the concretes, putting the poles, and the rest of the things, up to painting the uh, fence. So what we do is, uh, we break down each work package into the activities, and at the end we get a very thorough and detailed list of activities for each work package. Uh, for example, 1 it will be completed with, for example, these 5 different activities. And then work package 2 completed with n number of activities, work package 3 activities, work package 4 2 activities, down to work package n that is completed, for example, with the help of 1 activity. The purpose of further breaking down the work packages is so that we can estimate the activities or tasks required, uh, estimate their time, their duration, uh, so that we can schedule these activities, so that we can monitor these activities and control these activities. The rule applies here is normally 4 to 40 hours. The rule of thumb for work packages was around 8 to 80 hours, but here it is 4 to 40 hours. That is half a day to 1 week of time. Normally in exam, you might find the question around decomposition. At that time, you have to by looking at the statement of the questions, you have to see that if this decomposition is at the work breakdown structure level or work packages level, or it is further down at the activities level. So question context, question statement will tell you that what this question is asking, what type of decomposition it is talking about. When we are defining our activities, we are also able to determine the milestones. Milestones are, as you know, as you can see from the name, these are, you can think of major targets, or maybe the completion of a phase, or a point where you consider paying to your vendor or your contractor when he or she completes the work for you. Once we have our activity list, the second step is sequence them. The purpose of sequence is we really want to put our activities in such a way that their sequence should be logical, and it tells us that what activities our team will do first, what activities will our team will do after that. A very simple example is shown here. This is start of our project. This is end of our project. Here you can see that we have activities, different activities. For example, A, B, C, D, and E activities. And we can clearly see that activity A is the first activity, and after that we do 2 activities that could be done in parallel. But important thing to note here is B and C, both activities are dependent on activity A. Once activity A will complete, then we can start our activity B and C. And another important thing is here path is diverging. Can you see? This path is diverging. What it is saying? It is saying that if our activity A will be delayed, our activity B and C both will be delayed. Now let's move further. Here comes 2 activities, D and E. D is depending on B, E is depending on both B and C. It means that we can start D activity only once B activity is finished. And we can start E activity when both B and C activities are finished. Here again, you can see the path going out from activity B. It is diverging into D and E. Okay. And if you look on E, the path coming to E, basically there are 2 paths that are merging into E. When we develop our schedule, when we develop our network diagram that we are going to learn soon, okay, when we sequence our activities, we always think about these paths, okay. If activity is diverging or uh, it is merging, okay. If activities are diverging, the risks are more. If activities are merging, risks are also more. So these are few things when we develop like schedules, detailed schedules where there are like 5,000 activities or 8,000 activities on a project. These things are very, very important. These are the risks related to our schedule. If there will be more diverging or converging paths, then there will be more risks related to schedule. And when we will be identifying our uh, risks, we always look on the network diagram. Network diagram we are going to discuss soon. In fact, the diagram shown in this figure is also a network diagram. Okay. Uh, Network diagram help us to sequence our activities. It help us to see the whole schedule in one go, what is going on. Okay. We always keep the network diagram in front of us and think about the convergence and divergence paths, and related to those paths, we determine the risks, because what may happen if uh, one activity delay, it may impact multiple activities. And if one activity is depending on multiple activities, then if one of those uh, uh, predecessor activity is delayed, the whole activity is delayed. It means that our project will keep on delaying. We will talk more about them today uh, in more depth, but let's move further. Let's go and see PDM. President's diagramming method. This diagramming method is a very simple method. The purpose of this diagramming method or PDM method is how to represent our activities and the relationship between them. You can see in this figure that activities are shown on the nodes, okay, and whereas these arrows are showing the dependencies between two activities, activity B and A. And what it is talking about? It is talking about activity B is dependent on activity A. Once activity A will complete, only then we can start our activity B. Now let's talk more about these dependencies and relationship between activities in more detail. In fact, we can divide them into four types. And the first one is finish to start. Once activity A will finish, then activity B will start. As you can see in this simple example, that once digging of the hole will be completed, the next step is we can plant a tree or plant a seed. So we can clearly see that this is finished to start relationship, and this relationship is type of a very natural relationship. We cannot plant a tree until we dig a hole. Okay. uh, when relationship is natural, we normally call it hard logic. Hard logic means that this is the nature of these activities, that they should be dependent uh, in sense of finish to start. We call them hard logic. When there is a hard logic, our activities will always be like this. However, there is another terminology, another logic called soft logic or preferred relationship. This is not a natural relationship, but a relationship normally we prefer to do work in that particular way. We will talk about it soon, but firstly, this is finish to start. Uh, Second is start to start. What this relationship talks about? It talks about that, okay, until our activity A, that is design of a system, doesn't start, we really cannot start coding for that system. Okay, so but no one stops us that okay, once design is started, we can start our code. Okay, and we really need not to wait for the design to finish before starting the code. As we keep on designing, we keep on coding. But important thing is we cannot code until our design is started. Remember guys, here the relationship is start to start. Relationship is not about finishing lines. Okay, and these lines can be finished at any point. And then there comes another relationship called finish to finish. What this relationship talks, it says that okay, until activity A doesn't finish, we cannot finish our activity B. For example, in software, until our testing is not finished, we cannot finish our documentation. Again, the relationship is about finish lines. Relationship is not about start lines. Okay, these activities can start anytime. In fact, if something is like this, let me show you. Activity A is on the top and activity B is here. What it is saying, though activity B started early, but until activity A will not finish, we cannot finish activity B. Important thing to note here is relationship is finish to finish. There is no particular sequence or relationship of start components. Okay, they can start anytime. Activity A can start early, activity B can start early. No dependency. So these were our three types. In most of the projects, in most of the schedules, finish to start or the most of the activities are finished to start. In fact, 90% of the activities on any project are this natural relationship of finish to start. Once one activity will finish, uh, another activity will start, especially if there is any dependency between the activities. Then there comes this last relationship. This is called start to finish. Uh, Start to finish relationship is saying that okay, if these are two activities, until this activity uh, doesn't start, the other activity cannot finish. Mean activity A should start to finish activity B. Guys, any example about this? Okay, before thinking about the example, what about rest of the relationships? Did they make some sense?
Yeah, the other ones make perfect sense.
Yeah, thanks, Tanya.
Now I think about this one.
Yeah, so can you guys think about any example? Because we can find a lot of examples of finish to start, start to start, finish to finish. Any example of start to finish?
So is that start to finish, meaning you cannot finish
Yes.
until you have started
Another,
the
another activity. True.
another
So,
activity.
so the start of next activity is important to finish this activity.
But it doesn't necessarily have to finish.
Yeah, yeah. So this is start
Because
to
it's
finish.
start to finish. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is actually quite rare.
Yeah, yeah. It is very rare. In fact, you might not find this type of relationship in on most of the schedules. You will find 90% of this type one relation and rest of them would be either start to start or finish to finish. But this type of relation very, very rare. In fact, I talked with many different programmers who program the schedules. according to them, out of like 10,000 activities, you might not find even a single activity talking about start to finish relationship, but it is rarely used. One example that comes in our mind is, okay, if there is a security guard who is on job on a bank, okay, he really cannot finish his work until the next security guard starts his work, isn't it?
Got it. Okay.
And also, maybe most of you already heard about this terminology.
Just in time.
Yes, just in time, JIT. JIT method is one of the scheduling methods. It is used in the inventory management. Okay. The purpose of this method is we really don't want to keep our inventories. We really don't want to store anything. We will buy or bring more stuff once previous stuff is almost finished, so that we need not to store it, we need not to keep the record, we need not to keep the inventory of our stuff. Just think about pack and save, where normally we get our teagle chicken and the cooked chicken. Okay, uh, they normally don't store that chicken. What happens is they bring the next chicken in next baked chicken once the previous chicken is almost finished. Okay, so this is previous chicken. Okay, next chicken will only come once previous chicken is almost finished. Okay, that relationship is once next chicken will come, previous chicken is going to be finished. That is start to finish relationship, and it is very commonly used in the inventory management, or we call it just in time, used in manufacturing industry quite a lot. JIT manufacturing.
Faiz, if I can share, we do have that kind of behavior or kind of
Yes.
relationship in terms of scheduling as well, because we manipulate a lot in terms of scheduling our, let's say, for instance, installation of a UFB service.
Yes.
So we can always request the UFB, and what I do is make a timing so that the completion of my UFB, by instance by chorus, will be in time for the completion of my engineering works as well, because I've got a parallel job. Well, my engineering works will have to start and
Okay.
finish, but I cannot finish my installation of my UFB
Yeah. Until
the engineering works actually finished.
yeah.
So I'm
So
not sure where that actually falls, if it's start to finish or finish to finish kind of relationship. But there's definitely a manipulation of the schedules in there,
true.
because
True.
you cannot just leave the UFB installed way ahead of the engineering works.
Yeah. So that's one thing we need to think about. That is it like a finish to start relationship, or is it start to finish relationship? Uh, so that's what we need to think. So according to you, that you really cannot finish your engineering work until UFP work starts, something like that.
No. In this instance, just we can't. I'll timing the UFB installation according to the completion of the engineering work. So I can't just easily start start or schedule
Yeah.
the installation of the USB, the circuit,
Yeah.
until I get to know the finished time of the engineering works, because I'll have to time both of them. Basically, they do not have to be necessarily exactly the same.
Yeah.
There's really huge control in there because of billing component. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite tricky where
Yeah.
that kind of situation, but it's very common
thing.
In our case, yeah, in our industry, it's a very common activity that we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and normally this is to me it is more like finish to start. You need to know the finish time of your UFP work to start your engineering work, or
Vice versa.
yeah, or vice versa. But it looks like finish to start, and because it is very common, as I already told you, that 90% of the activities are finished to start.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It looks like it is finished to start because you need to know the finish time of the other activity, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's
So
right.
yeah, then it would be finished to start.
Okay.
Yeah, but start to finish is very rare. It is just like just in time. It is just like that security guard example. Maybe it make more sense than this inventory example, but inventory example is real life example where you you do the scheduling in such a way that once new material comes, new inventory comes, your previous inventory is finishing, something like this. So that is start to finish. You deliberately do this thing. You deliberately make this relationship of start to finish in those cases. Okay, now let's move further. Let's talk about different type of dependencies. We already talked about them in the last slide, though. Mandatory dependencies or hard logic that is basically inherited in the nature of the work, or maybe it is given in the contract. I mean, you have to do this. You have to do activity A first, then activity B. And the second type is discretionary or preferred, or you can say soft logic. It is basically the way you want to do it. It's not compulsory that you should do activity A first, then activity B first, but your team is interested in doing this thing. Now, for example, you can install Windows first, you can install door first. It totally depends on you. And then external and internal dependencies. External dependencies are imposed by external parties, external stakeholders. Internal dependencies are basically uh, what you do. Basically, these are type of soft logic dependencies. It is by it is decided by the project team so that they can do the activities as they like, or mean your team feel that by doing activities in this sequence will help them to do the activities easily. Few more concepts: lead and lag. Very easy concepts. This is, for example, these are two activities. Okay, if you bring second activity early, okay, bit early, then basically you put some lead time here. Okay, instead of starting for example, this activity started on day 1, finish on day 3. This activity started on day 4, finish on day 6. What can you do is you can start activity B at day 2. Okay, especially if it is a soft logic, or if there is no dependency between activities A and B, you started on day 2 and finish on day 4. This is basically bringing activities together. This is just like a compression of your schedule, especially the time when you are deviated a lot from the schedule and you really don't have time to finish the project as per the schedule. Then what you do, you compress your schedule, or you add more resources into it so that you can finish your project within the time. And then there comes lag. Lag activities are basically if logical sequence of two activities A and B is like this: activity A starting on day 1, finishing on day 5, and B starting on day 6, finishing on day 15. Okay, uh, what can you do is totally depends, and because of many different reasons. For example, contractors are not available, or there is a rain going on, or you need to give some time for activity A. For example, you put concrete and you want your concrete to be settled down before putting the poles into it, so on and so forth. What can you do is you can put a lag time in between. Mean first activity started from 1 to 5 days, you waited for 2 days and started next activity from day 8 and finish that activity on day 17. So this is called lag. Normally, this thing is under the control of project manager and project team. They can add lead or insult lag. Then there comes our next process. This process is our process 4. Estimate activity in duration. Once we have a detailed activity list, okay, and we already know the sequence between them. We know the predecessors and successors of different activities. And the next step is now let's determine the duration of each activity. Okay. At this point, project team sits down, subject matter experts sit down with the project manager, and they start discussing about the duration of each activity. Many factors need to be considered when we are determining the schedule of each activities, and they are given here. Tanya, can you please read them for me? Okay, Pedro, can you please read these things for me? These are, you can think of the inputs required for estimating the activity duration.
Okay. The inputs to estimate the activity durations are activity list and activity attribute,
Yes.
assumption log, lessons learned register, resource breakdown structure, resource requirements, project team assignments, resource calendars, and risk register.
So activity list and activity attributes are basically, this is the input coming from the previous process. This is needed to determine the duration of each activity because we get the activities from this list. Assumption logs are those logs that we created, and we made assumptions about many different things, including about the schedule of the people, schedule of the resources, and so on and so forth. Lesson learned registers are basically our previous information that may tell us that, okay, uh, on previous projects, similar activities took this much time and how much time our current activity will take. So lesson learned information may talk about it. Lesson learned may also talk about our contractors who are working with us, and may tell us that how punctual are they and how effective and efficient are they, how much time they take to complete one activity or the other. And then there come RBS, resource breakdown structure. Uh, resource breakdown structure also have another name called team chart. Team chart is nothing but starting with the project manager, okay, and the team working with it, okay. Who are the team members, who are our human resources, and what tasks they do, how many plumbers we have, how many technicians we have, how many engineers or IT experts we have, how many BAs we got, so on, so forth. So this is resource breakdown structure. And then resource requirements, how many resources are needed. If we need 2 technicians, we have to look on those technicians calendars called resource calendars. So resource requirements plus resource calendars, both things we must think while uh, determining the schedule of an activity. Project team assignments also help us to find the duration. If someone is fully dedicated for an activity, he may complete that activity within set time. But if her or his work is divided into two different projects, in that case, they will be able to complete that activity uh, in a longer time, so on so forth. Similarly, risk register. Risk register is also very important in many sense. They are important to develop the schedule or estimate the activity duration. One of the reason of using risk register is there would be many activities that would not be related to the completion of work. They will be related to mitigate the risks. For example, if rain is one of the major risks on your project, then there would be many activities you need to plan, you need to estimate their time to basically cater the rain. Or nowadays everything is around COVID, that is one of the major risk. So you normally do many more activities because of this current pandemic that could be related to, for example, if you are organizing a big event, you have to think about how to ensure maybe social distancing or masks or the use of sanitizer, so on and so forth. All those activities you need to consider. Risk always add a number of activities in your schedule. Now let's go to our next point, that is estimating the activity duration. When we talk about duration, yes, please.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say thanks, Pedro. My Bluetooth got out, so apologies. My keyboard wasn't working.
Oh yeah, not a problem, Tanya. Okay, so for that sake, let's go back to our whiteboard and see different estimation techniques that could be used. Let me talk about them. Whiteboard, I'm trying to share whiteboard. What I do is, uh, for any type of estimation, either it is related to schedule, or it is related to cost, or it is related to the resource. Okay, I divide them into two types estimation techniques. For this is just for better understanding. The one is top-down approach. The second one is oh, why it is not bringing the text? Bottom-up approach. What top-down approach says, it is says that, okay, this is our project and we will complete this project within 6 months. Okay, this is overall duration. We determine the duration of a project, and after that we say that, okay, 1 month for phase 1, 2 months for phase 2, 2 months for phase 3, and 1 month for phase 4. And then for each phase, okay, to complete work, if there are 5 work packages, we will take 6 days to complete each work package, so that phase 1 should be finished in 1 month. This is bottom-up approach. Sorry, this is top-down approach. And normally these decisions are made based on many different techniques. For example, one of them is called analogous estimate. Okay, why I'm saying that the project will take 6 months, phase 1 will take 1 month, phase 2 will take 2 months, and the work packages under phase 1 will take 6 weeks, 6 weeks, 6 weeks. And then under to complete those work packages, each activity will take 1 day, 1 day, 1 day. We normally do this type of estimation based on our previous experience, our previous historical data, because once I built my previous home, it took 6 months. It was 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom, and a lounge. I'm doing the same thing again as a construction manager. It will take 6 months, isn't it? So this is called analogous estimate. You use the analogy, you use the historical data and your expert judgment, and then give your client 6 months of time as a top-down approach. And other type of top-down approach is parametric estimate. What is parametric estimate? Where not only you use your historical experience, okay, but you also use a type of mathematical formula that helps you to calculate. Let me give you the example. Previously, I built a house of 150 square meters. Okay, I built it in 6 months. Okay, or in other words, 1 square meter took me around 6 over. If I divide, I put months into days, 180 over 150. Okay, and this much time it took to complete each square meter. Now I'm going for example, a house of 200 square meter. How much time it will take? 1 square meter takes 180 over 150, and 200 square meter house will take this much of time. You can do the calculation, and maybe instead of 6 months, it would be taking 8 months. This is called parametric estimates. In fact, when we estimate the costs, parametric estimates are one of the good estimation technique, especially if we are talking about house building. Normally we say that 1 square meter take around $2,000 or maybe $3,000. If we want to build 90 square meter unit, it will take 180,000. We just multiply 2000 with 90. So it means that it is effective by many ways, but still it is a top-down approach that may not be very accurate. And then there comes another approach for top-down that is called heuristic. Heuristic approach, as its name says, this is a standard approach about doing a project in that particular industry. For example, it is standard that to build a bridge, it will take 2 years in New Zealand. Okay, that's industry standard. We can use this heuristic approach. Okay, if we are going to build another bridge, it will take 2 years. But maybe in China, that bridge is built within 6 months. Then heuristic in China is 6 months for building a bridge. This is called heuristic approach. Top-down approach is normally a rough approach. It really doesn't give you a very accurate schedule, because firstly you just told by using any of these techniques, you just told that this much time this project will take. Then you further break down the timing into the phases, into the work packages, down to the activity level, and it could go very wrong. In projects that run for long time, estimation is done in a much better way. That is bottom-up approach. What bottom-up approach says that, as you already know, guys, that what we did is we develop a work breakdown structure. Under work breakdown structure, we had different phases. Under each phase, we had different work packages, and then for each work package, we determine many activities. For example, 3 activities for this work package. Okay, we already got all that. We already got work breakdown structure, our activity activities list and well sequenced list, milestone, so on and so forth. Now we are estimating its activity, its duration. We go from bottom, from activity level to work package level to control accounts level to phase level, and from phase level to the project level. And when we do it, there are strong chances, no doubt it is more time consuming, okay, and sometimes it depends on the time available. We choose one estimation approach or another estimation approach. If time is available and in fact where thorough schedules are developed, we go for bottom-up approach. And when we try to determine the duration of each activity, we can do it with the help of single point estimate. Single point estimate says, single point estimate. It says that, okay, activity 1, it will take 3 days. Activity 2, it will take 5 days. You can represent the duration in days, in hours. It totally depends how you do. Normally it is done in hours, but just for the sake of example, I'm using days. Activity 3 is taking 10 days. 1 day, by the way, is equal to 8 hours. This is called single point estimate. You really don't estimate by yourself. You get help from your team, subject matter experts, or the managers who are experienced in this domain to develop this type of estimate or schedule. Single point estimate can go very wrong, okay, because you really didn't looked on different options, especially the worst case scenario, the best case scenario, and the most likely scenario. So for that sake, if you wanna go a more better estimate, in that case, you go for 3-point estimates. 3-point estimates, sometimes they call it triangular estimate. Now, what this type of estimate says that instead of just taking 1 point, okay, 3 days for activity 1, what you say that, okay, for activity 1, what would be the worst case? How much maximum time it will take? They say, okay, now I'm writing in hours, okay, it will take, for example, 30 hours. And what would be the best case scenario? They say minimum it will take 20 hours. And then you ask your subject matter experts or your previous data or previous schedule. You think about how much, I mean, what is the most likely chance that this activity will take the number of hours. They say, for example, 25 hours. In that case, you take all these maximum, minimum, and most likely and divided it on 3. Once you do it, you can get a figure. Can anybody calculate for me? Anybody? 25.6 hours. I might be wrong. Okay, but this is my guess.
Yes, 25.66.
So 25.6 hours. This is more realistic estimate. This is called 3-point estimate. However, there is an other way. We normally call it PALT technique. PALT technique says, and this is basically program evaluation and review technique. It is used for many different purposes. We will discuss soon. But at the moment, just think about PALT technique, where what you do, you go for weighted average. if you look here in this example in triangular or 3-point estimate, we didn't go for weighted average. We did just an average. In PERT or beta estimate, we call it beta estimate. We do bit better estimate, and this estimate say that activity 1, okay, that in this example we said that it will take 3 days or 24 hours. Okay, here we determine the time using most likely using maximum time, minimum time, and most likely time divided by 3. And in PERT or beta estimate, we say how much maximum time it will take. Okay, 30. Minimum time it will take 22, and most likely time it will take. But we give more weightage to most likely time. It is called 4 times. This is a formula, proper formula. 4 times 25 mean we give more weightage to our most likely time. And again, we don't estimate these by ourselves sitting in our office. We consult with the subject matter experts. Divided by anyone?
6.
Yeah, divided by
6.
6. So if you calculate this figure, it will become 152 by 6. That is all.
25.33.
Yeah, so it will be 25.3 hours. Okay, this one is more realistic. So you determine this for activity 1, you will do it for activity 2, you will do it for all different activities for each work package, and then you will aggregate the whole thing, and it will give you a very good duration estimate for your whole project. These are few estimation techniques that could be used for cost estimate, duration estimate, resource estimate, or any other type of estimate. Any questions? Okay, now I'm going back to our slides. We talked about 1-point estimate, we talked about analogous, parametric, heuristic, 3-point, bottom up, but I explained you in a logical sequence instead of just putting them randomly. Here the formulas are given for triangular distribution. That was simple straight average of pessimistic, most likely, and optimistic. Pessimistic is maximum time, optimistic is minimum time, and most likely is most likely. Here we gave more weightage to most likely, and then by using these formulas, we can calculate the estimated duration for each activity, and then aggregate them to determine the estimated duration for each work package, and keep on adding up to project level. This is called bottom-up approach. We also do many different type of analysis while we are doing our estimates. Okay, one of the type is alternative analysis. Sukanya, if she is around. Okay, yeah. Grace, can you please help me to read alternative analysis?
Sure. Alternatives analysis involves evaluating the impact of each option on project constraints, including financial investment versus time saved and level of risk.
So basically what it is talking about that when we talk about the duration of each activity or resource estimation for each activity, we think about option 1, we also think about the alternative option, or option A, option B, and option C. For example, if it is a plumbing work, okay, If we go for a very famous senior company who is good in its work, very reputed, they will charge us, for example, $4,000, but they will be able to finish this work in, for example, 3 days. But there is a proposal from another company, another plumbing company. They are new guys, and they are happy to do the same work in $2,000, but they may take up to 4 days because there is a risk that they are junior plumbers. Similarly, for example, even if you take the example of PMP certification, if you want to go for PMP certification, there would be trainers that would be charging more, but they are pretty famous in the industry, more reputed, more trustworthy. But there could be some trainers who are new, but they may charge you less. So you always do this type of comparison, and this is called alternative analysis. That famous ABCD, okay, 4 different plans. If plan A doesn't work, go for plan B, then go for plan C, so on, so forth. Similarly, another type of analysis is called reserve analysis. Reserve analysis, Pedro, can you please read for me?
Reserve analysis. Project managers have a responsibility to establish a reserve to accommodate the risks that remain after the risk management planning processes are completed.
Yes. 2 types of reserves. Contingency
Two
reserve.
types of Yeah,
Yes.
sorry.
Yeah, please continue.
2 types of reserves, contingency reserves and the management reserves.
Contingency reserve and management reserve. Basically, what is reserve analysis? This analysis talk about that how much uh, reserve days are required so that we can mitigate the risks. Remember when we were doing the planning, we were doing not only scope, schedule, and cost planning, we were doing all different type of planning, including risk planning, including identifying risk, conducting their qualitative and quantitative analysis, so on, so forth. When you do all those analyses, you might be able to determine, okay, uh, it's winter here in Auckland or New Zealand, there is more rain and there are chances that work won't be finished in 2 months. We might need some reserve days, and those reserve days, especially which are linked with the risks, okay, which are linked with the risks are called contingency reserves. Okay, we also, on top of our duration estimates, okay, yeah, so this is our duration estimate for all the activities aggregated together. We say that, okay, 60 days. Okay. Then what we do, we add contingency reserve, but in terms of days, we need 10 more days as a backup, as a contingency reserve on top of these 60 days. In other words, our project will be finished in 70 days, but we ensure that all the risks are catered for. Okay, so overall duration is 70 days to complete our project. These 2 components, our duration estimates plus contingency reserves. These are called our schedule baseline. Then there comes management reserves. The definition of risk is these are those uncertainties that may come on the project and we identify them. Okay, or in other words, risks are called known unknowns. We know that there might be a rain. Okay, So rain is a risk. So risk are alternately called known unknowns. Contingency reserves are made for known unknowns. However, there could be few risks that might not be identified and we really don't have any idea that they may come. We call them unknown unknowns. To cater for these unknown unknowns, we normally always keep management reserves. For example, 20 days. As a project manager, our control is only on these days. This is with the project sponsor, not with us. We really cannot say, no, we know that we have 90 days to complete project. No, we have to complete our project 70 days. It's our responsibility. And normally these extra days are kept by the senior management, by the sponsors as a part of management reserve in case if any unknown comes. This type of analysis is called reserve analysis. Any question?
So that's not included in the baseline, the 20?
No. So 20 won't be included in the baseline. Or in other words, for example, your sponsor, your boss promised the client that they will complete the project in 90 days, but he or she will not give you 90 days to complete the project. He or she will give you, for example, 70 days to complete the project and will keep these 20 days as a management reserve in case if a project team cannot complete on time, still we should have some time. Okay. Now, once everything is done, okay, our estimates are made. Next step is to create the network diagram. What is network diagram? Depending on our time. Okay, let's quickly make a network diagram with the help of our whiteboard. Network diagram says that it starts with basically start, okay, and it end with the end. We put them in oval shape. I really couldn't make oval shape here, but this is start, this is end of a project. It consists of activities, okay. So let me draw those activities. This is one activity, and this is another activity, this is another activity. So many different activities. Think of that standard construction project take 5,000 to 7,000 different activities. What we do is we give name to these activities. For example, you can think of this is activity A, and we estimated it will take 3 days. Okay. Next step is we talk about 4 different terminologies. And those terminologies are about start and end. And these terminologies, I'm writing them here. ES talk about early start, okay, early finish, not earliest start, earliest finish. So I don't have space, so that's why I'm just writing earliest finish, late start, or in other words, latest start mean how much late it could start and latest finish. Let's talk about our ES, EF, LS, and LF for each activity. I'm going to do it here. Okay, activity A started on day 1 earliest. When earliest it will finish? 3 days activity.
4.
Yeah, 4. Next activity, which has this type of relationship. Okay, and I'm calling them B and C. This activity will consist of 4 days. This activity will consist of 2 days. When B will start?
Day 4.
Day
5.
5. Yeah, and will finish?
9.
Yeah, and C activity?
5 and 7.
5 and 7. Now, let's draw something here. Activity D, activity E. Activity E is 2 days. Activity D is 1 day. When activity D will start?
10.
10 and finish?
11.
Activity E, when it will
9.
start?
10 as well.
Yeah, it will start 10. And when it will finish?
12.
12. Let's move further and talk about rest of the activities. Okay. And say here, this is F, this is G, this is H, this is I, and this is end. Now, let's talk about G activity. If it is, for example, of 10 days, when it will start?
13.
Day 13, finish on day?
20.
Yeah. When it will finish?
23.
23.
3.
And what about this activity? 12?
How many days?
Yeah, for example, if 2 days, it will be
14.
14. This activity, 24th, and we'll finish at, if it is for 2 days, finish at 26. This activity, when it will start?
26.
27th day.
27. Yeah.
Yeah, and if it is for 5 days, it will finish on
32.
22 days. So whatever I wrote is basically it is talking about the duration. It is talking about early start and early finish of each of the activity. Okay. This is a network diagram. It includes early start, early finish, duration, but we still didn't put late start and late finish. We are going to do it. Okay. This shows us a very clear picture that how much time our project will take, what are the dependencies, where are the risks, where are convergence paths, where are divergence paths, so on and so forth. In fact, this early start and early finish thing that I put it here, this is called forward path. This is called a forward pass, not path. It is forward pass. The next step we do is on any project to understand its schedule well, to control its schedule well, we run a backward pass. What backward pass is, we start from the end and go back. Okay. So can you please help me to start back? 32 days, and this is called latest finish. isn't it? Because
Yes.
our project is finishing in 32 days. Okay, so this is our project schedule, 32 days. Okay. Now, when this, what would be the latest start? 32 minus 5, 27, isn't it?
Yes.
What do you think as when this activity will start? Latest finish this activity?
26.
26 days, latest finish. Okay. And what about this activity? It will be finished the
26.
latest.
26, I think.
Yeah, 26. It will finish on 26. Now, before moving further, whatever I wrote, did it make some sense or there are questions? Because this is bit mathematical. So,
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you.
okay. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, why is that 26 on top?
Yeah, because you see, on top we wrote earliest start and earliest finish. Now we are talking
Yes.
about the latest finish and the latest start. We can clearly see that, okay, this last activity it latest it could finish is on 32 days and latest it could start on 27 days, same as its earliest start and earliest finish. Okay, now
Yeah.
go back to age. It each can latest finish on 26, same like its earliest finish. Okay. Similarly, each will latest start at 24, same its earliest start. But on the other side, because this activity I must start, the latest start for this activity is 27. If our activity F can finish on 26 days, we can say that, okay, we are fulfilling the requirement of latest start, that is 27. Okay, so basically,
Right. Again, that's why its latest finish is 26.
yes. And latest start of it will be 24.
4.
Okay.
Understood.
Now let's go back. So here it will be 23 and 13. Very easy, isn't it? Here it would be how much?
21.
Here
21.
21.
23.
Yeah, 23.
Yeah, 23.
23.
Yeah, 23. And 20.
22.
Yeah. Here 12 and 10. Same thing, isn't it?
Yes.
And here
9.
9.
yeah, fantastic. And here
Yeah.
7.
7. Okay. Now let's come to this complicated thing. How much?
Nine.
Why?
Because it's depend on the one at the bottom side.
Yes. So basically it is saying that if instead of 9, if we will put 21 here, okay, then what would happen? This activity A will be delayed because activity is depending on it. So it must finish on day 9 so that day 9 so that we can latest start our activity E on day 2. So it will be 9 and then this will be automatically 5. Now come here. What would be the figure here?
4.
Why?
Because it depends on the B.
Yeah, otherwise B will be delayed. Okay, so it must be finished on day 4 and then 1. Okay, now you got it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, this is called backward path. In fact, can you find out how many paths are here? Can you tell me if we want to determine? let me tell you one path and you can tell me another path. A, B, D, F, I. This is one path. A, let me write here with the text. A, B, D, F, I. This is one path, isn't it?
Yes.
And
Yes.
how much time this path is taking? Can you please tell me?
32.
32.
3 plus 4 plus 1 plus 2 plus 5.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how much?
15.
15?
15, yeah.
Fantastic. Next path. Grace, can you please tell me the next path?
Is that C?
E,
E,
A,
G,
C,
A, sorry, A, C,
hmm,
E,
hmm,
G,
G,
is that H?
H,
Yeah.
and I,
Okay.
isn't it?
And I, yes, that's right.
Yeah. So how much time this path is taking?
24 days.
3 plus 2 plus 2 plus 10 plus 2 plus 5. That would be
24.
7, 17, 22, and 24 days. Thank you, Eman.
Yeah.
Any other path?
A, B, E, G, H, I.
A,
H, I.
B, E,
E,
G, H,
H,
I. How much time it is taking?
7, 9, 19, 21, 26.
20?
26.
Okay, that's fantastic. And any other path? No?
I think that's all, yeah.
If that's all, then why we have 32 days? There should be a path that talks about 32 days.
Yeah,
It means
A,
we,
C,
yeah,
E, G, H, I. Oh, we've done that already. Sorry. Okay.
Same, this one, same.
yeah, there is
Um,
something then missing. What could be that
yeah.
thing? There should be a path that
Yeah.
can talk
So
about,
ABE.
yeah, A,
We
B,
have that.
The one GHI. Sorry.
Hmm. There's got to be 32 there.
yeah, somehow.
Well, the first one is
4, 5. Okay, so here we are saying 7. Why it is taking 10 days? 10 days. So 1, 4, 5. Or we made a mistake somewhere. Which mistake we made? I found it, but anybody else can find it. I mean, this is a mistake I made, but I found it out. What is the mistake? I will tell you, but anybody can guess what mistake I made.
oh God. It must be the total days.
Yeah, so it was a silly mistake. I'm sorry about that, but let me tell you. Activity A will take 3 days. If it starts day 1, when should it finish?
Finish the 3.
Day 3. 1,
Yes.
2, 3, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
So this is a mistake I made. So that's why what happened is these 26 days, can you see? 1 day is continuously added. For A, for B, for E, G, H, I. So we missed those 6 days. In fact, this is 32. In fact, the same will happen with all other 6 days equal to 30 days. And this will be 5 nodes. So 5 more days, 20 days. Okay, so this is correct now. So guys, you can clearly see that we have three different paths with 20 days, 30 days, and 32 days. The longest path is called critical path. Reason? If any activity delayed,
There's no room for error.
The
yes,
project will be delayed. Yeah.
the project will be delayed. So we need to keep an eye on the activities which are on the critical path. In fact, we also need to think about near critical paths. You can see only 2 days difference. It means the activity on this path, though it is not a critical path, but it is a near critical path. Here the activities, if they are delayed more than 2 days, our schedule will be delayed. However, for the activities here, okay, uh, we have some flexibility available, some float available, okay, uh, for each activity and in fact for the whole path, isn't it? Next question is how to determine this float? Very simple formula, may come at the exam. You have to divide either latest start, latest finish minus earliest finish, or latest start minus earliest start. So LS minus LF, am I correct? No,
LF.
no. Latest finish minus earliest finish,
LS.
or latest start minus earliest start. For example, for this activity, how much is the float? For this activity, how much is the float? 0. Clearly, 32 minus 32, 0, 27 minus 27, 0. So no float available. If this activity is delayed, the project will be delayed. Any float available here? No?
No. No.
0.
No.
Any float available here?
Yes.
How much?
12.
12 days. It means that if activity F, if it is delayed for 12 days, it will not impact on our project. So we might not that much worry about this activity. Here float is 0. Here float is quite a lot.
Well,
How much? 12 days. And here float is 0.
0.
Here float is 0.
0.
Here float is
2.
oh, so
2. And here float is
Here.
0. So you can see that we can determine the float of each activity. Okay, or flexibility available for each activity. This method is called CPM, critical path method. It helps us to determine how much maximum time our project will take, what is the longest path, where we need to focus more, what activities are critical, what activities are not that much critical. Any question about this? Okay, so I'm going back to the slides. If anybody want to take picture, though it is a wrong calculation, no need to take picture though. Let's go back to our concepts. This is our process 5, develop schedule, a realistic schedule. Normally this schedule is developed once we define activities, we sequence activities, we develop network diagram, we run forward and backward passes. Just think about these were only 5 activities. If there are 5,000 activities, how many paths will be there? How many critical paths will be there? How many near critical paths will be there? CPM would be much complicated than this much. So normally software, they help you to do all those activity, all those things. They help you to identify the critical activities. They help you to find the critical path, so on, so forth. But when you develop schedule after doing after doing the CPM and running the forward and backward pass. In fact, when you are developing schedule, you have few inputs to consider. Historical record mean your previous schedules, they always help you. Schedule management plan and scope baseline. Plan tells you how to develop your schedule. Scope baseline gives you work packages for which you have to develop your schedule. Defined activities, you already know about them. Milestone lists, you already know about them. Remember, milestone lists normally have zero duration. They don't have any duration. Milestone is just a milestone. Okay, so you don't estimate duration for your milestone. Assumption logs, network diagram, as we just saw. Basis of estimates mean uh, how we did the estimate. Was that in hours, in days, how much variance was allowed, so on, so forth. Activity duration estimates that we just did. Resource requirements, how much resource is needed for each activity, what type of resource is needed. Are we going for senior or junior subject matter experts for that work? Resource calendars, when they are available, when they are not available. Do they work Monday to Thursday or Monday to Friday? All those bits we consider in mind. RBS or team chart. This team chart tells you that who are different members of our team, who will be doing work. Company calendar, for example, how many days a year a company is open, and what about Christmas holidays. All those bits you consider while developing your schedule, not only your own company calendar but your client's company calendar. Project team assignments, if they might be busy in some other projects. Risks, because they give us many activities to consider in your schedule. Once your network diagram is done, the next thing is you conduct a network analysis on your network diagram by using critical path method. You just have seen the example of it. Also, you might do some schedule compression. We are going to look at schedule compression in the coming slides. Similarly, if you did a PULT analysis, do you remember PULT analysis? Anybody remember PULT analysis?
Are you meaning PERT, the PERT?
Yeah, PRT or PULT analysis. That is basically this formula. 3 points estimates, but with the weighted average. Do you remember?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. So Monte Carlos analysis, basically it is a simulation based analysis. Okay. It takes the data if you did this type of estimation by using PULT analysis or PERT analysis, okay, or beta analysis. It takes this data, and based on this data, it tells you how much time your project will take. So it gives you a definitive answer by considering all the activities, their estimates. It will give you a clear idea that uh, when your project will be completed. And if you make some changes, you do some alternative analysis called what if. I mean, if you change your resource and you change your most likely estimate, or pessimistic or optimistic estimates. So this is optimistic, this is most likely, and this should be pessimistic. Excuse me for this. So if you change any value in pessimistic, optimistic, or most likely estimates, then it again adjusts your schedule using simulation. Normally, Primavera MS project, they provide you this facility of conducting Monte Carlo analysis. We also call it what if analysis. Similarly, you apply some resource optimization techniques, and for agile project, you think about for each release and the iterations within that release. Critical path method, we already talked about it. We also know about the critical path. We are well aware of near critical path. We know the activities need to be taken care on critical path and also on near critical path. We talked about float. This is nothing but schedule flexibility. Three types of float: total float, free float, and project float. Total float is the overall flexibility available in your schedule. Overall flexibility available within your schedule without delaying the deadline. Okay. And free float is basically the flexibility available for example, activity A without delaying activity, its successor activity or its dependent activity without delaying activity B. This is called free float. And then project float basically talks about the flexibility available, including the management reserve, without delaying any externally imposed condition. Okay. Your client really wants to complete the installation, when installation within 2 months, no more than 2 months. So this is externally imposed condition. This is called project float. Okay, the flexibility available to complete the project within the externally imposed condition. We talked about critical path method in detail. We know how to calculate float. There might be 2 to 3 questions around that. So you should do some exercise around it, but the question will not be very much complicated. Schedule compression. In projects, normally times come when your sponsor say that I really want to complete this project in 80 days instead of initial estimate of 90 days. In that case, project manager has to do something. For that sake, the technique that could be used for compressing the schedule are either fast tracking or crashing. Fast tracking is very simple, especially if there is not a mandatory dependencies between activities A, B, C, and there is a soft logic or preferred dependencies between A, B, C. What can you do is you can run activities in parallel. Okay, so you bring back activities near to each other. Activity A was started on day 1, finished on day 3. B started on day 4, finished on day 5. C started on day 6, finished on 7. Now what you did is you started both B and C on day 4 to finish it on 5. Day 4 to finish it on day 5 to save the 2 days. This is called fast tracking. Okay. The benefit of doing the fast tracking is only once you do this with the critical path activities, because other activities already got their flexibility. So you really don't need to worry about other activities. Then there comes crashing. Crashing is nothing but adding more resources. If you are installing a WAN setup or you are configuring the software for your WAN setup, instead of 2 IT engineers, just put 4 IT engineers, and they might do it early. But again, keep that rule of law of dimensioning returns. Really don't put resource more than a point where their expected outcome is not as per the ratio you added the resource. Data analysis or simulation, we already talked about Monte Carlo. Monte Carlo analysis is normally done with the help of software, but it takes the data obtained from PERT estimation. Also, there comes resource optimization techniques. The focus of resource optimization technique is not to compress the schedule. Okay, its purpose is optimize our resources. Let's talk about one quick example. For example, if one activity is finishing in 10 hours, another activity is finishing in, for example, 12 hours. This is day 1, this is day 2, but the staff that is available, he or she works for 8 hours a day. What does it mean? It means that he or she won't be able to complete that activity within one day. So we need to level the resources. Okay, and we will do it without even thinking about our schedule. Okay, because these extra 2 hours here, these extra 3 hours here, there will be work of 5 hours on next day, on day 3. Mean our schedule may be delayed once we do our resource leveling. Normally we do it, for example, once we have only one staff available. Otherwise, 10 hours of work could be done by 2 staff members, 5 hours, 5 hours. Okay, so resource leveling is done when you have limited number of staff available. However, resource leveling may increase or lengthen your schedule. On the other side, resource smoothing. Resource smoothing is a technique through which basically, for example, one staff is working for 8 hours, another staff is working for 5 hours, then you do things in such a way, you make your schedule in such a way that both staff should work for example, one is working for 7 hours, other is working for 6 hours. So it should be, the staff should be leveled in an appropriate way. However, resource smoothing really doesn't impact on project schedule. It doesn't delay the project schedule because you do the resource smoothings within the limits of the flexibility or limit of the float of the activities. Okay, so you should know this difference normally comes at the exam. Resource leveling delay the schedule, resource smoothing doesn't delay the schedule because this is done within the float available. Agile release planning, it is basically this planning or this schedule planning is normally talks about just that when we will have our first release, for example, after 3 months. Okay, when we will have our next release after 6 months. So you develop a product roadmap that talks about when will be our next releases and in each release, how many iterations will be there. Okay, and how long will be each iteration? Maybe 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. And in total, there are total 6 iterations, so on and so forth. So this is scheduling in Agile. Output of developed schedule is nothing but our project schedule that will include Gantt chart. How many of you used Gantt chart?
I do.
Yeah, so Gantt chart is just like a bar chart, but they also have the activities, their start and end date, many things into it. But important thing is it has the bars into it. Milestone charts, network diagram, so on, so forth. We already talked about the schedule baseline. It includes your schedule estimate plus contingency reserves. Schedule data is whatever data, start, end dates, critical path, all this raw data is called schedule data. And we do our monitoring using this data. Change request is talk about that what would be the procedure to change in the schedule. Project documents update. In case when we develop realistic schedule, we use all different techniques of compression, resource leveling, optimization, CPM. There are chances that we might need to update our documents. Then there comes our last process called control schedule. In fact, we are going to talk about control scope, control schedule, and control cost in tomorrow's lecture in much more detail. But here we do only one thing. We measure our performance in terms of schedule with our schedule baseline. Okay, and we keep an eye that if our project is going as per the schedule, if there is any issues that are causing the change in the schedule, how to remove them, how to remove their root causes, so on, so forth. Re-estimating is one concept that is basically talking about in big projects. Normally, schedulers, what they do is after each 6 months, they re-estimate the activities just to see that, okay, what was our previous estimate? Is it still valid or not? Or does it need some fine tuning into it? Okay. So this is called re-estimating. Each year you can do it once or twice. Now, that's end of today's session. There are 4 slides left. We will discuss these slides tomorrow. These are nothing but the revision slides. Any question?
Do we have session tomorrow, Faiz, or is it for
Oh,
Monday?
Tomorrow mean the
Monday.
next session. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Tomorrow is Friday. I really don't want to ruin anyone's Friday. These are
Thank you.
my own.
No, that was good. Enjoyed that one. Thank you.